to use this tool wisely when it comes to what should we release for public viewing and what we shouldn't. So when it comes to the use of force by officers, I'm going to be very quick to want to release that. When it comes to an investigation of something, some tragedy that occurs with a young juvenile victim, I'm going to be very, very, very slow to release that. Did I answer your question?
You did, thank you. Any other questions for Chief? Okay, thank you again. Well, let's see, let's go through the pre-meeting agenda here. Okay, we have executive session minutes. Do you have a chance to look through them?
Or can I take? Sorry, it's like right on my agenda.
No, Councilman Huber is absent. I thought that was you.
He didn't get me either. I'll check it tonight. I haven't had a chance to go through and check it. So,
Okay, are we all set? Executive session minutes?
You got a purple one there for 4?
Okay,
that's for tonight. Yes.
I already have, yeah, I have it 4 already.
let's move on to CATSI Executive Director Search Funding Request. Carter?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Good evening. You saw recently in one of your packets a letter from the CATSI organization with a request that is effectively a request to consider the partial or full reimbursement to the organization for the costs that CATSI incurred to hire a recruitment firm to bring in Mr. Jones, who is seated right over here, our new director for CATSI, and of course to replace the outgoing director, Ms. Cole, who we will miss, Marge. Big shoes to fill. I hope nobody told him that before he came on.
They drilled it into his head.
Yeah, I bet. You probably noticed in the memo that Ms. Crump prepared that the financial commitment the organization took on for this recruitment really was in 2 phases. One was direct cost to bring on Western States, I believe they're called.
Employers Council.
Employers Council, they used to be called.
Yeah.
But also the cost to provide for the overlap of the former director and the current director until roughly the end of the fiscal year. And so that total cost, if I recall correctly, is in the neighborhood of $67,000. And so the question for council this evening is whether or not council would feel comfortable reimbursing basically the CATSI Foundation's fund balance that was incurred to make these two segments of cost happen. And as I mentioned to Ms. Crump, that could be in the form of a partial or a full or a zero reimbursement scheme, depending on what council directs us to.
Questions, comments? Excuse me.
Bless him.
Chris?
Where would this come from? It's,
That's a good question.
Mr. Mayor, Councilman, if council does decide to move forward this evening with some form of reimbursement, we would ask that the amendment actually on the floor tonight be amended to further reduce the amount of sales tax dollars that we've received in surplus for this particular fiscal year. And so whatever that amount would be, we would just draw it from those funds, in the general fund.
at least part of this is gonna be an ongoing cost with salary increase, correct?
Mr. Mayor, Councilman, what you will likely see is an increase in the budget request that comes from CATSI through the budgeting process that you're about to undergo here in late April and May.
Steve?
Well, part of the concern that I have is that there was a budget increase along with this, and if we're being asked to pick that up, I'm not really 100% behind that. We just went through some cuts. Ken brought up several cuts out in Paradise Valley area where we took stops out and whatnot. And it's kind of a hard pill to swallow to the public, I think, that we just made a bunch of cuts in CATSI to keep the thing running, but now we're gonna take on more added cost for this, the position, the additional funds put into the position of the director now.
I have to agree with Steve.
Chris, and then Bob?
This one kinda caught me flat-footed, and I don't know, had we discussed this and I just hadn't looked at it? I mean, I'd seen this, but, you know, as early as today is when I looked at it. I don't remember any warning.
I don't recall that we discussed it prior, but go ahead, Carter.
Mr. Mayor, Councilman, this has not been a work session topic. We have sent the letter out several times prior to tonight. The most recent packet, I would say, is probably the second time you've seen this letter. I don't recall sending it out in 3 previous packets, but at least twice.
Bob?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I actually support this. I kind of wish we'd had a heads up they were gonna spend money for an outside concern, but they are a contractor to us, and they provide a service to the city, which is absolutely needed. And with respect to Councilman Friel's comments, a lot of those changes in the bus routes, they were made after we did a study and found them to be more productive to do what we did. And granted, there were some stops removed. But the idea is to provide bus service to the people that do not have wheels. And when you figure this city's, our metro area is better than 9 miles from one end to the other, there's a lot of people that need that. And while I'd appreciate a heads up next time this happens, I think I'm willing to go and pick up the tab with the budget amendment.
So, Carter, if we agree to this evening, are we committing ourselves to the budget request for fiscal year 20 then, at this point, or are those 2 separate decisions?
Mr. Mayor, I would suggest that those are 2 separate decisions. Because you're gonna have a budget request that obviously covers a variety of proposals and that sort of thing. This would be one of them that come forward in the FY20. Christine?
So the way I understand it is the initial intention was to have no overlap. Is that correct? Sorry, we might have to direct the question.
Mr. Mayor, Councilwoman, when you talk about overlap, you're talking about the continued tenure of
Correct.
Ms. Cole compared to the new tenure of Mr. Jones. And I guess I don't know the answer to that. I'd defer.
Marge let the city and the CATSI board know in the middle of last year that she would be retiring. Marge is the only executive director CATSI has ever had. So in our city discussions and in our board discussions, we realized that replacing someone who was the only executive director who had started the system was gonna be a major challenge. So we also realized, because we were going through the budget process with the city, that there would be no money to do an employee search to get the quality of candidate we needed. So we as a board decided we would commit to try to figure out how to do that from any funding we could find rather than asking the city for it. So we have a foundation, very small, that was started by a founding member, and periodically people have put little dabs in it. Legally, we could take out the interest. So we took out the interest of that foundation, determined we would hire employers counsel to do a national search to make sure we could find someone who could step into Marge's shoes. Because CATSI is a very complicated system funded by a combination of federal funds, state funds, local match from the small towns, Casper, you own the buses, it's a very, very complicated system. So we were aware, and I think the city staff that works with CATSI was aware that Marge couldn't leave on Friday and somebody new would start on Monday without some training. So part of what we decided to do, in addition to paying for that search, was also to cover the cost of employment of a person who would start work and be able to learn with Marge as we were going through the budget process for the coming year. So we did the search, we hired John, we have an employment agreement with him. He started March the 11th. And Marge will leave probably before June 30, because John is catching on rapidly and he has 30-some years of transit experience. He's a great candidate to replace Marge. And when that happens, then of course we'll stop paying Marge's salary and we'll just be paying John's salary. But we wanted to be sure that we compensated John from the beginning with the salary he deserves, which is higher than Marge's salary, because Marge, being Marge, would not take a raise for many years. So he's getting a market rate salary. And we also had to do the normal employment things like you do when you hire anybody. We gotta move him here. We gotta do those kind of things. So that's where the amount came in. And there was a great deal of planning, consideration, advance notice. We maybe didn't share enough of that with the council, but we were working with the MPO that we always work with, and they were well aware of what we were doing. So, but I'm very confident that we did not waste any of the money we spent hiring the Employers Council. They did an incredible process. We ended up with national advertising. We started out with 50 candidates. We did a market survey to set the salary. We whittled those candidates down through a written process, through telephone interviews, and through personal visits before we picked our final candidate. Our final candidate was the unanimous choice of the board and Marge and the CATSI staff. So he's fitting in beautifully and we're thrilled. So I hope the council will support and start to build a good relationship with him like you've always had with Marge. I can answer any other questions.
Chris?
Mine are pretty simple. Liz and Carter and all of you are in agreement? This is wise to cover?
Mr. Mayor, Councilman, I guess I'm not suggesting that the entire bill be picked up by the council, but I do think that the city saved at least indirectly, with regard to not having to coordinate and conduct that search through our HR office. And so to have some skin in the game, so to speak, probably isn't out of line.
What's your recommendation?
Mr. Mayor, Councilman, I would say 25%, which would be in the neighborhood of what, 15,000?
How badly does that affect you?
Well, you know, what we've essentially done is we've taken that small foundation and it's now down to the corpus. So we can't touch it for anything else. So if there's any other crisis, we have, you know, we can't use that to help. So anything that we get, of course, we can put back in, and that'll generate a little more interest. And, you know, something that struck me this afternoon, which I certainly can't speak for the board, but we're going to end this year with a budget deficit. And we're probably going to be coming back to you to say, okay, we have a budget deficit at the end of this year. What do you want to do about it? I can see a rationale for our board saying, okay, give us some money for this, we'll stick it back in to help with operations. I haven't even brought that up with the board or Marge or John. That just ran across my feeble mind this afternoon. So, because I am concerned that we're going to be back to you at the end of the fiscal year, because there's not enough money to finish out bus service for the year.
Ken was waiting.
Few questions. So the 5,000 that you're supposed to save when you guys cut those stops, you're still gonna possibly be behind.
Oh, yeah.
And then you looked at replacing him last year, or replacing Miss Marge
We
from
started the process last year.
started last year, and it was completed on what date?
He started work on March the 11th.
March 11th. But he was actually hired on what date?
His hiring date was March the 11th.
March 11th. But, I mean, when did you know you were gonna bring him in, pay for him to move here, all that stuff? Hasn't that already been done?
No, his final, he had to sign, we have an employment agreement with him, and he had to sign all of that, we did all that, we did it all legally.
Okay, before,
So
on
the
March
commitment,
11th.
the commitment was signed a day or two before.
A day or two before, okay.
He had to get across country, he's from Charlottesville, so he had to get across country. But we had reached an agreement with him probably a week or so before,
A week or so
that
before, okay.
everything was set.
I guess I'm just kinda surprised with the cuts on the bus stops, that I'm surprised we didn't wait until he came on to evaluate it, since he was taking it over, or somebody was gonna take it over. Wait to see what they thought, since they were coming into this. So that's just what I was wondering. I'm kinda took him back
Well,
that he
you know-
wasn't involved in it,
Well, you
in
know,
a pretty
Marge,
big decision like that.
Marge is the expert.
And I agree.
And the other thing is, because those changes needed to be run through the public, and our direction from the council was to get them made as soon as possible to save money. So we did that process as quickly as we could. You'll notice that those changes haven't taken effect yet.
But
And they won't take effect probably until maybe, best case scenario, the 1st of May. So a process that we started a year ago to try to work in saving some money, being more efficient, et cetera, has taken a year to implement because of the way the process has to work. So if we would have waited until we brought John on board after Marge was gone, you'd be another year out from any of those efficiencies you wanted to see. So it was expeditious to get that done. And we've gone over everything with John since he started, and from his experience, at the board meeting the other day, he said he had looked at the CATSI operations in comparison to the 3 other transit systems that he's run, and he said he was extremely favorable. If you'd like to speak to that, you're welcome.
Good evening, city manager, mayors, city council members. Yeah, I did look at those, and I've also looked at our performance statistics, passengers per hour, passengers per mile, versus other systems I've run in Medina County, Ohio, Summit County, Colorado, and also in Charlottesville, Virginia. In Charlottesville, Virginia, we didn't do the paratransit or the demand response side. We only did large fixed routes, and we had a provider that did the paratransit and the demand response side. We compare very favorably with that organization. It's called JAUNT. I won't go into what it stands for, but they're nationally recognized as a leader in demand response and paratransit transportation. And our performance indicators in regards to passengers per hour, passengers per mile, are comparable with that organization. And it's actually a much larger organization. It's 90 buses in 5 counties. So CATSI performed very favorably against just about any demand responsive organization in the country. And our fixed route numbers don't look that bad for our size either. They're comparable to our the neighborhood fixed route numbers that I experienced when I was with Charlottesville. Summit County, Colorado's more like your Jackson Hole area, so it's kind of an aberration with as far as the figures go, because you do transport massive amounts of people. That organization also ran almost 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, so there really is no comparison with that one. A Medina County operation was very similar to CATSI. I ran that one, it's been 20 years ago now, but our numbers were in the same neighborhood when I ran it. It was a countywide demand responsive operation at the time. So this organization performs very well as it is, with the efficiencies that Marge and the other staff over there have planned, working with Liz and Aaron at the MPO. I think they'll make some difference. We may need to look at these things again as we move forward. We're always looking at these things in transit. I like to tell everybody, and I will tell all of you, and you'll hear it from me numerous times moving forward, a transit organization cannot be static. If you ever think that you're going to set up a transit operation and it's going to be set it and forget it, then set it and forget it, because it's not going to work. Changes happen in communities over time. There are demographic shifts, population shifts, an aging population in an area. So you're always going to be looking at the organization dynamically and making changes year to year to make it keep up with the changes in the community over time.
Well, Mr. Jones, welcome to Casper. Thank you for coming this evening, and we wish you the best. I just wonder if we don't have more concern and discussion in front of us that make it difficult to resolve this evening. Chris?
Well, I would recommend that we add an amendment to the budget tonight to fund 25% of it. When the new budget requests come through for the next year, of course there'll be a deficit, and of course I think we're all committed to making sure that bus is still running, and we'll address those shortfalls at that time. And if we require further explanation, I'm sure we'll be able to get a prepared answer, and everything will be perfect.
Is that, Ray, you were waiting, is that consistent with what you were going to say?
That's kind of the direction I was going to go.
Any other concerns about that proposal? Is everybody okay with doing that right now?
Well, I still have some concerns. There's no point in robbing Peter to pay Paul. We need this done. We need to have a transit system, and I really believe we need to support the transit system. Now, granted, there may have been other ways to get this done, but we did know a year and a half ago that Ms. Cole was going to retire. And perhaps that's oversight on our part or somebody else's part, but the point is, we still need to run the transit system. And to make them come begging twice for the same thing the same people still need the rides in the transit system. And I think they've done an effective job of finding a good leader. They've used a good organization to do it. It was relatively expensive, but we certainly would have had to carry some of that burden if we ran this organization ourselves. And so the burden would have been the same whether we did it or whether we have a contractor do it. So I would recommend we just bite the bullet and pay for it,
The full amount.
the whole thing.
Full amount. Well, should we debate this on the floor this evening and then just take a vote? Or is there a sense that we should give ourselves more time to discuss this before making a decision?
I guess my question would be is, I know where Bob's sitting, he wants to pay for the whole thing, more in line where Chris is coming, 25%. And then we can look at it when it gets to the budget deficit, see how we can help them continue through. And that's kind of the recommendation I'm sensing from the city staff at this point too. So I feel,
I'm just trying to be cognizant of the fact that it's now 5:58.
just where everybody else is at, I'm
Kristen?
not sure.
Just a quick point of clarification, only because I wasn't here last June. So, from my understanding, this was known as of last June as far as that this was going to happen, that we were going to some degree. So, as far as like covering the salary for the 4 months until the fiscal year, was that not included with the budget? I mean, I know they would have known the
No.
salary exactly, but shouldn't there have been?
Nope.
I don't think we had a discussion about funding the search process.
Well, this is the salary, so the search process would be the top half, but part of the request is his salary for the next 4 months. So I guess, once again, I wasn't here, so I don't know.
There was no
but-
funding, for a search or a salary for a replacement in last year's budget. And, you know, as you get into the budget process, the budget is, CATSI prepares a budget, it goes to the city, it goes back and forth, back and forth. CATSI does not have the authority to do a final budget. The final budget is approved by the city council. So there was no provision put in that budget for a search or a replacement.
I'm really gonna have to interrupt here, we have a 6 o'clock meeting, so, there's 2 ways we could do this. One is we could defer the discussion to the next work session and carve out 10 minutes to further discuss this, to see if we can come to a consensus. Or out on the floor, we could deal with the amendment to, pay 25%, see if that has 5 votes. Or we could also have an amendment to, postpone the discussion to a date certain.
A date certain.
But we need to get out there, Chris.
If we pay 25% now, we don't hinder the operation, we still be addressing needed budget shortfalls in the future, and that discussion will be had no matter what, so.
Well, we've taken the money out of the foundation, so we have the money to pay John, we had the money to pay the search, et cetera. So anything that you give us back is a bonus for us. When we get to the budget, because we've taken some of the expense away from the city, but it's not gonna impact the operations at all. We've got that covered. But when we get to the end of the year, you're going to see a budget deficit from CATSI. And that's totally aside from this. That's got nothing to do with this.
One more comment from Stephen, then we have to go out on
I
the
was just
floor.
gonna say, if it's covered, then I would just prefer, being that seem like we're across the board, if we could fit it into the next work session, then I'd rather see us discuss it there and not make a knee-jerk reaction at night, one way or another.
Not approve the 25%
Correct.
this time. And we've got a range of opinions here, so, it looks to me as though we should defer action on this, but Kristen?
I was just gonna clarify something for everyone that I think I just like had a light bulb moment on. The reimbursement is going to the foundation, which is not part of the city budget or the money that we're putting up.
No.
That's probably a separate 501c3, correct?
It's a 501c3.
So I
That
guess
was-
keep that in mind.
It
Yeah.
backfills their
It just
fund.
backfills.
Basically gives them a
Correct.
reserve that they
Foundation.
lost
Yeah.
through this
Backfills.
entire process.
Correct.
Because we have no reserve other than that foundation. So that's what it does, it's a backfill.
Okay.
Let's
Why do we
table
wanna
it,
do
Mr.
this?
Mayor.
Just table it tonight?
Table it.
Table it tonight, and we'll make sure nothing bad happens if we need the money in the short term.
Well,
enough.
let us
Sorry,
know
Michael.
when, and we'll be back.
Thank you.
Carter,
Yes, sir.
when we're talking about approving the council's goals and objectives, is it this document?
Sometimes these work sessions go boom, 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 and then sometimes we get bogged down, so.
You know what you technically,
I now call the April 2nd, 2019 regular council meeting to order. I apologize for the delay. Our pre-meeting went a little longer than expected. The council would entertain a motion to, by minute action, excuse the absence of Councilman Huber.
so moved.
Moved by Councilman Friel, seconded by Councilman Walsh. Please cast your vote, and please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, motion passed.
And just a reminder, the council meetings are televised and can be viewed on cable channel 192. I'm seeking a volunteer this evening to come to the podium and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Do we have a brave soul that would like to take that on? Thank you, sir. Could we get your name, please?
Dean Welch, I'm District Commander for the American Legion here in Casper.
Thank you for volunteering, Mr. Welsh. We're ready when you are.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Chair would entertain a motion to approve by minute action the minutes of the March 19, 2019 regular council meeting as published in the Casper Star Tribune on March 26, 2019.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Vice Mayor Johnson, seconded by Councilman Bates. Any amendments to those minutes? Please cast your vote, and please record the vote.
All members voting aye, motion passed.
The chair would entertain a motion to approve by minute action the minutes of the March 19, 2019 executive session.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Vice Mayor Johnson, seconded by Councilman Friel. Any amendments to those minutes? Please cast your vote, and please record the vote.
I wasn't there.
Oh, okay. With the abstention of Councilmember Walsh noted, motion passed.
The chair would entertain a motion to approve by minute action the April 2nd, 2019 bills and claims as audited by City Manager Napier.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Hopkins, seconded by Councilman Pacheco. Any abstentions? Please cast your vote. And please record the vote.
All members voting aye, motion passed.
We are pleased to welcome representatives of Serve Wyoming tonight. And I would like to introduce Shelley McAlpin, the Executive Director of Serve Wyoming. Shelley, would you like to come up and say a few words?
Thank you, Mayor. May I ask my fellow cohorts to come up here?
Please do.
We're going to be a bunch, but it's kind of exciting. Merit Corps, Senior Corps, Jonathan, if you'd want to come up. The Serve Wyoming staff. Mayor, these are just a few of the national service members that are serving in your county, in your city. To my right here, Dean Welsh, she's one of our commissioners. Thank you, Dean, for being here.
Oh, you bet.
Where can I start? I get a little nervous when I get up here. This is a fun thing. It's kind of exciting, though. So today we recognize national service in our state. Since 1994, we've had 3,000 AmeriCorps members serve the state of Wyoming. They've given substantial amounts of hours to various different things in our state that address critical need. They've been teachers. They've done reclamation work. Just here in Natrona County, I know we have a couple, sorry ladies, that serve on in different capacities, from food insecurities and working with interfaith, helping with financial literacy at Wyoming Coalition Against Domestic Violence, Sexual Assault. I apologize if I've missed anybody. But there's a substantial amount of people that dedicate up to a year of their life just for this. At the end of their service year, they receive a scholarship. And since its inception, we've had $6.9 million that have been awarded to Wyoming AmeriCorps members, which is really exciting. It goes to our community college, technical institutes, and the University of Wyoming, which is pretty cool. I also wanted to recognize members of the Senior Corps, and I point to Jonathan as he's one of those people that helped do that programming. You might be familiar with it as foster grandparents or senior companions. Those are also national service programs that serve in our state. And last year there were 800 members across the state of Wyoming.
Very cool.
Anything else I missed there, Jonathan? Good deal. Well, I have had the honor of working at Serve Wyoming for a long time. And we are the Governor's Commission on Service and Volunteerism. We have two primary purposes. Our first is that we award and monitor AmeriCorps dollars throughout the state of Wyoming. And the second is that we provide a statewide volunteer center known as Volunteer Wyoming. So today we recognize service, and we appreciate that you consider this as a proclamation for our town.
Very impressive. You did great.
Oh, thank you.
And we do have a proclamation, and I'm going to invite you all up to stand behind the dais, and I will read the proclamation and present it to you. No one's required to. You're all welcome.
We're not usually a shy bunch, so surprised it's taken us this long.
I always start reading a proclamation by giving people a count on the whereases. And we have 6, so I'd put this in the middle range. Let's see, is there room for everybody? Great. Whereas, a hallmark of the American character is national service and is central to how we meet our challenges, and it expands economic opportunity by creating more sustainable, resilient communities and providing education, career skills, and leadership abilities for those who serve. And whereas AmeriCorps and Senior Corps participants address the most pressing challenges facing our communities, from educating students for the jobs of the 21st century, to fighting the opioid epidemic, to responding to natural disasters, to supporting veterans and military families. And whereas national service represents a unique public-private partnership that invests in community solutions and leverages non-federal resources, to strengthen community impact and increase the return on taxpayer dollars. And whereas participants in AmeriCorps and Senior Corps serve in more than 50,000 locations across the country, bolstering the civic, neighborhood, and faith-based organizations that are so vital to our economic and social well-being. And whereas these participants demonstrate commitment, dedication, and patriotism by making an intensive commitment to service, a commitment that remains with them in their future endeavors. And whereas the Corporation for National and Community Service shares a priority with local leaders nationwide to engage citizens, improve lives, and strengthen communities, and is joining with the National League of Cities, the National Association of Counties, Cities of Service, and mayors across the country for National Service Recognition Day on April 2nd, 2019. Now therefore, I, Charles Powell, Mayor of the City of Casper, Wyoming, do hereby proclaim April 2nd, 2019 as National Service Recognition Day. Signed, Charles Powell, Mayor of Casper. Earlier today, I had the privilege of attending an event that promoted the importance of people volunteering to serve as donors, organ donors or tissue donors, in the event of a catastrophe and the need for that tissue or those organs. And I started my remarks by saying, you know, there are many aspects of being a mayor that I cannot in good conscience recommend to someone, which was intended as a joke, but no one laughed. But these are the moments when it truly is a privilege to serve, and I feel proud of our community because Casper is a giving community, and there are countless residents of our community who do exactly what you folks have done, step forward to do the right thing, to do things for their fellow citizens, because it's a caring community. It's a community of people that help each other out. And it just makes you proud to be a city leader. So thank you so much for your service. Now is the time that we invite anyone in the audience who wishes to speak with the council to come forward. As stated on the first page of the agenda, we ask the following. Please state your name and address. Please direct your questions to me as mayor. No personal attacks, and presentations are limited to 5 minutes. Is there anyone here this evening to speak to council? Please come forward. Take your time. Good evening, Mr. Rowland.
Good evening. Keith Rowland, 542 South Durban. I have a number of points. I'll be real quick. First, I wish we would say the Pledge of Allegiance correctly. It is not one nation, pause, under God. It is one continuous phrase, one nation under God. Some people, that's very important. For whatever reason, this council always seems to pause, and I was kind of surprised that this is a very religious community. You would think they would say it correctly. Two, I wish we would start doing drug testing for all the employees that work for the city. An indication of this problem was an article in the paper a couple of weeks ago where a substitute school teacher, clearly by the based on her picture, had some problems. Looks like she was under the influence of something, but was teaching in school. CATSI, as I understand, does drug test their bus drivers, other employees. So I don't see why the city doesn't do it. I think the county should do it. I think the school district should also do it. Most businesses in town do it. I don't know why we don't do it. Third point is I'm going to give you my annual recommendation that we sell the event center. It seems like every year that we're subsidizing the event center for about $1 billion. Since I first proposed selling the event center in 2006, I think I totaled up almost $14 million we put into that white elephant up there. At that time, I said we should have sold it for $1. I still think we should sell it for $1. My next point is I think we're spending way too much money. We need to run surpluses for the next few years to replenish our accounts that we drained for 3 years. I think we need to replenish those accounts plus add a little bit more, especially since the state is considering cutting different, payments to the local governments. And I think that we have to be cognizant of the fact that the cuts may increase going forward, not decrease. My last point is, sort of based on the prior point, is I think we need to get rid of the expenditures for KDET, where I think is around $600,000 per year. I don't see anything coming out of this group, nothing. A lot of money is being spent. Since it was first raised at a meeting in 2006, when I think it was Mayor Burgess at the time, said something about, what do they really do? What do we spend this money on? And no one could give an answer. We've spent how many millions on them? And every time they come to a meeting, they come up with these grandiose things and little pictures and everything else, but there's nothing that really shows how much they produce for the city. I think we're spending way too much money on this effort. And in fact, I think we're going the wrong direction. Instead of bringing businesses here, we need to concentrate on the people who are here and how they can do business going the other way, online. I mean, even lawyers and doctors now work online, going the other direction. And we need to maybe train people here to do call services, customer services, writing articles for Vanity Fair. None of them work at the offices in New York anymore. They all work online. So I think we're going the wrong direction. Instead of bringing businesses here, we need to train people here that are here, raise their scale of skills so that they can work better online and make a higher salary than working at McDonald's for $9 an hour, get them up to maybe $16, $17 an hour doing some semi-skilled job online. That's not.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Rowland? Councilwoman Lutz.
Can we have the city manager comment on our drug testing policy? teachers are not employees of the city.
I know, that's what I'm saying. I mean, that was just an indication of the problem. That wasn't our problem. That was just an indication of a problem.
I don't think it would hurt to just go over what we do.
Would you care to comment on, go ahead, Councilman Walsh.
I think I can address that, Mr. Mayor. Our city does random testing on all safety-sensitive positions per the Drug-Free Workplace Act, and then also reasonable suspicion testing on anybody that appears that they may be impaired by drugs or alcohol.
Right, but that's random. I'd rather have it where some people are really good at hiding it. I mean, there's others better at hiding it than others. And I would just feel more comfortable to be around people. First of all, if I was working in the city, I would feel more comfortable working around people who have been drug tested. It gives you more comfort level. And I think there's no reason why. It's not that expensive to drug test.
There's legal reasons why.
Well, CATSI does it. Other governments do it. Businesses do it.
Those are safety-sensitive positions because they're...
If I have employees, none of my employees, if none of my companies we have equity in, not one of them will work for me if they have not been drug tested.
Private business. Any other questions for Mr. Rowland? Thank you, sir.
Good evening, everyone. My name is R.C. Johnson. I'm glad to see the smiles on your faces. I live at 450 North Washington Street in Casper, and I am here representing AAUW on Equal Pay Day. This is something I do regularly. The last time I was here, I did not bring cookies, and I was questioned about that. Tonight, I brought cookies. So they're for you to share and for everyone in the audience to have a cookie, okay? The cookies do say AAUW Equal Pay Day. And the writing on it is in pink because it's time that we attack the pink tax. I don't know if any of you know about this, and if you don't, let me just take a moment to talk about it. Pink taxes are those extra charges for women and girls for their products. If you were to go and buy a shaver, the Venus shaver versus any other Gillette shaver, women's products cost more. And that doesn't make any sense to me. So it's another way of attacking that wage gap and equal pay, because if we have to charge, or if we're charged less for the products that we're using, we'll have a little more money in our pocket. But the thing that bothers me so much is over the years, everybody has had an idea as to why there is a wage gap, why there is not pay equity. And it seems to me that one thing we have not tried is talking openly about it. Everyone has a study that they have done. Everyone has an idea. There's been legislation proposed, hasn't passed. And it seems to me that we keep a lot of things hidden instead of addressing them full force. It's almost like we're involved in a divorce situation, and perhaps we need some fair fighting going on, because it may not be fair what is going on now. And one of the things that we have talked about is transparency. But how can you be transparent about a pay gap or gender wage gap if you don't talk about it openly and honestly? What is its history? What is its current status? Where are we going with it? How can it benefit us as a society? And I think Casper is an ideal place to have perhaps a task force that addresses all of the issues, takes a look at all of the things that have an impact on our economy and on the economies of homes where women are partners, of course, but also where women are heads of household. Many times this is not taken into consideration. And it just seems to me that there are so many issues that could be addressed and should be addressed if we have a total approach to what is the wage gap and how can we best correct it. I want to give you an example of something that I thought was kind of interesting. We have the restaurants coming up. Well, in fact, we're on second day of the restaurant week. And I looked at the ad that is on our website. If I were a woman, there was nothing that would appeal to me. You say nothing about families. There's no suggestion of coupons. There's not even the idea of date night. Those are things, and how do you build romance into it? I mean, many women are still romantic. I think most of you gentlemen are romantic too.
1 minute, please.
Okay. So there are a lot of things that we should be addressing, and how we can address it in a more holistic way, a more cohesive way, that looks at the full range of the economics of what women bring to the community, but most important, what is our value? Is every single one of your committees, does it have a woman on it? Is there anything that asks, what is the impact on women and families in our community? Every piece of legislation should have a piece of that. So I thank you for listening. How did I do at the time?
Great.
Okay.
I was going to ask our city attorney if it would be legal for us to grant an extra minute anytime someone came with dessert, but I suspect I know his answer, so.
Well, I didn't pass these out because I didn't want you talking while, eating while I was talking. You know, I've been a teacher, I've been in education long enough. You don't do those kinds of things. So I'm offering these to you, and then anything, I'm sure I brought enough that the people in the audience can have a cookie.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Any questions for Ms. Johnson?
Yes, sir.
Councilman Bates.
If you would, I am asking if you can find my email and email me some of that information or ideas or anything you have regarding that. Something that I have enjoyed doing is doing ride-alongs or seeing some of the places in Casper. And one of the main questions I always ask each place is, how many women are working there? And then I posted on my Facebook of usually how many women are working at that, in that areas, and just hopefully to draw some interest for ladies to look at that. So I hear what you're saying, and I would love to get an email from you and kind of hear more what you have to say and ideas or solutions, anything like that. And see what maybe I can bring and see how we can help.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that offer. Okay.
Any other questions for Ms. Johnson? Thank you.
You know better, huh?
Oh, we've had the discussion. I agree with you.
Anyone else to speak this evening?
Thank you for the cookies,
Yeah.
by the way. Appreciate it.
You gonna get it back to Ms. Johnson? Oh, thank you. I look forward to your cookies every year.
See, that's what I'm saying. When I didn't bring it.
Please read the consent agenda titles.
Establishing April 16th, 2019 as a public hearing date for consideration of the following two items. Approving the vacation of a portion of South Elm Street between West Collins and West 8th Street, and new distillery satellite liquor license number 1 for Backwards Distilling Company LLC, doing business as Backwards Distilling Company Satellite, located at 214 South Walcott.
Thank you. The chair would entertain a motion to, by minute action, establish the public hearing dates just read.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Councilman Walsh, seconded by Councilman Hopkins. I think, any abstentions or nay votes? Please cast your vote, and please record the vote.
All members voting aye, motion passed.
I now declare the public hearing open for the consideration of fiscal year 2019 budget amendment number 2. Mr. City Attorney, do you have exhibits?
Thank you, Mayor. We have one exhibit, exhibit number 1, correspondence from Tom Pitlick to J. Carter Napier dated March 22, 2019.
Thank you. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. The amendment this evening has a number of purposes and really is not atypical to the amendments that you've seen in the past come forward and that we typically have to address the council with. Generally speaking, amendments are set for the purpose of dealing with unanticipated revenues, dealing with unanticipated expenses, and as is the case with this particular amendment, dealing with movement of dollars from one fund to another that violates the original resolution that was put into place, albeit not require more expenses or revenue to make that transfer happen, if you will. In the circumstance of the amendment that we find ourselves this evening, there are two major things that are occurring. Well, three. Consolidating of funds does bring a number of transactions that make up the majority of the $3.8 million that we're asking for in amended figures. But we also have the circumstance of accounting for the direction given by council to unfreeze wages, which has obviously been an issue of great discussion and thought and everything else. We also have a project that we are moving up in priority with regard to the needs at the Ash Street building that the city owns and is occupied by the state, wherein that project is needed to be completed before the heat season, if you will, comes into play, and air conditioning currently in the building is not adequate. Those dollars, however, necessary for that project will be backfilled by 1 cent $16 in that was a project that council approved for that use of funds. Beyond that, Mr. Mayor, we are hopeful that council will support this amendment and move it forward.
Thank you. Council will now listen to public comment. Is anyone here to comment on budget amendment number 2? There being no one to speak for or against the fiscal year 2019 budget amendment number 2, I now declare the public hearing closed. The chair would entertain a motion by resolution authorize the fiscal year 2019 budget amendment number 2.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Pacheco, seconded by Councilman Bates. Discussion. Councilman Walsh.
I'd like to abstain from the personnel raises.
Any other discussion? This was covered in some detail last week. Any amendments? Please cast your vote, and please record the vote.
With the abstention made or noted by Councilmember Walsh, motion passed.
Okay, thank you. On the agenda is a public hearing for the consideration of the annexation, plat, and zoning creation of the West Casper Commerce Center addition. However, staff is requesting that the hearing be canceled and the date reestablished. The chair would therefore entertain a motion to, by minute action, cancel and reestablish the public hearing date for April 16th, 2019.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Walsh, seconded by Councilman Bates. Please cast your vote, and please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, motion passed.
I now declare the public hearing open for the consideration of the transfer of location of retail liquor license number 21. Mr. City Attorney, do you have exhibits?
Thank you, Mayor. We have 5 exhibits. Exhibit number 1, correspondence from Fleur Tremmel to J. Carter Napier, dated March 19, 2019. Exhibit number 2, affidavit of publication, is published in the Casper Star Tribune, dated March 11, 2019. Exhibit number 3, affidavit of website publication, is published on the City of Casper website, dated March 20, 2019. Exhibit number 4, affidavit of notice of a conspicuous posting pursuant to Wyoming Statute 12-4-104A, is posted at 100 North Ash Street, dated March 20, 2019. And exhibit number 5, the liquor license application filed February 22, 2019.
Thank you. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and members of the council. My apologies. The request this evening is rather simple, as the clerk read. The request is that the location for the Wyoming bootlegger liquor license be relocated to a property at 100 North Ash. Many of you will be familiar with that property as the former location of the Sandbar Lounge. One of the things that I would mention for you to be aware of is, unlike in most circumstances, this particular license has an effective date of April 30. And so the use of this license in its new location would not happen until that point.
Okay. Thank you. Council will now listen to public comment. Public hearing comments are limited to 5 minutes. At this point, I would ask those individuals who wish to speak in favor of the transfer of location of retail liquor license number 21 to please approach the lectern. Is anyone here to speak in favor? At this time, I would ask those individuals who wish to speak in opposition to the transfer of location of retail liquor license number 21 to please approach the lectern. Anyone here to speak in opposition? There being no one to speak for or against the transfer of location of retail liquor license number 21, I now declare the public hearing closed. The chair would entertain a motion to, by minute action, authorize the transfer of location of retail liquor license number 21.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Vice Mayor Johnson, seconded by Councilman Friel. Any discussion? Councilman Walsh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm looking through the packet here, and on the application, I don't even know that it might be in here. I'm overlooking it. Ownership of that building, is that going to be solely owned by the individuals on the bootlegger license?
Mr. Mayor, Councilman Walsh, my understanding is that Modern Electric is the owner of both the property that the license is coming from and the property that the license is moving to.
My concern was the building had previously been owned by an individual that we would not license. And so I wanted to make sure there was no interest overlap or anything in that. But if we're comfortable that he's not a part of it, then that's fine.
Mr. Mayor, Councilman, I don't believe so. I think Modern Electric is the whole owner of those properties. And so I'm not sure that I can shed further light beyond that.
Thank you.
Essentially, it's a different license in the former location of the Sandbar. Councilman Bates.
I will vote no for this, and the reason why is because we've all said it. These guys keep on, it keeps on coming up of asking to transfer or whatever it is with the liquor license, and nobody shows up to speak for it. And that really bothers me. So if somebody was here to speak for it, they'd be able to answer Councilman Walsh's question regarding it, and there is nobody. And that, if they care about their license, they would be here to speak on it. And I've heard several council members say, this is not a right, this is something that we approve of. And when somebody's not here, I can't approve it. I don't agree with it. So that's me.
Any other comments? Councilman Friel.
I guess just to answer Councilman Walsh's question, I did look at the assessor's website because I had the exact same concern, and it is owned by Modern Electric, so I'm confident that he's not involved.
Any other discussion? Any amendments? Please cast your vote. And please record the vote.
With Councilmember Bates voting nay, motion passed.
Please read the consent resolutions by title only.
I'm sorry, Mayor. I believe we
Oh, did I skip?
missed Cabin Creek.
Oh, so I did.
Thank you.
Thank you. Council will now discuss the ordinance for the Cabin Creek Number 4 edition. This item is open for public comment and for discussion by council. Please read the ordinance on third reading by title only.
An ordinance approving the Cabin Creek Estates Number 4 subdivision agreement and the final plat of Cabin Creek Estates Number 2 comprising .22 acres, more or less.
Chair would entertain a motion to approve on third reading the ordinance just read.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Hopkins, seconded by Councilman Friel. Council will now listen to public comment. Is anyone here this evening to speak on the Cabin Creek Number 4 edition? Any discussion amongst council? Any amendments? Please cast your vote, and please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, motion passed.
Now I'm on the right page. Please read the consent resolutions by title only.
Item 11A1, a resolution approving a 3-year agreement with Thomson Reuters for Westlaw Internet Legal Research Services for the City Attorney's Office. Item 11A2, a resolution authorizing an agreement with Whited Flooring Surface for the Rec Center floor refinishing project. Item 11A3, a resolution authorizing an agreement with JTL Group, Inc., doing business as Knife River, for the 2019 Residential Streets Improvements Project. Item 11A4, a resolution authorizing an agreement with Air Innovations for the Baylor Building Co-Ray Vac Replacement Project. Item 11A5, a resolution to establish funding guidelines for the City of Casper's Health Fund. Item 11A6, a resolution authorizing a contract for professional services with Geosyntec Consultants, Inc. for the Casper Regional Landfill Lifetime Permit Annual Reporting and Monitoring Project. And item 11A7, a resolution adopting the 2019 Council Goals.
Thank you. The chair would entertain a motion to adopt the consent resolutions just read.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Walsh, seconded by Vice Mayor Johnson. Do you have anything you'd like to explain, Mr. City Manager, about any of the consent resolutions this evening?
Mr. Mayor, I don't think so.
Okay, thank you. Any abstentions or nay votes? Councilman Walsh.
No on 7.
Okay. Any other abstentions or nay votes? Please cast your vote, and please record the vote.
With the nay vote of Councilmember Walsh noted, motion passed.
Please read the consent minute action title.
Item 12A1, rejecting the bids for the city facilities security door upgrades.
Chair would entertain a motion to approve the consent minute action agenda item just read.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Walsh, seconded by Councilman Hopkins. Any abstentions or nay votes? Please cast your vote, and please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, motion passed.
At this time, we ask council members to bring forward relevant concerns or items of interest. Let's start on the left side this evening. Councilman Hopkins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Earlier this evening, we listened to some changes about CATSI and some funding issues. And I guess I would just like to have council be aware that I think there are a lot of people in the city that consider the CATSI bus program, whether it's fixed route or whether designated route or pickup door to door, it really is part of our infrastructure. And while I realize that it's a difficult system to run, I think we've got a very capable person to run it. And I just really hope that we take this on to make it part of our infrastructure to run dedicated fixed route plus handicap buses. It's really important to the people that need it. They have no other option.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Walsh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had the privilege to go to the welcome home ceremony at the airport yesterday where the governor came in and spoke. So the welcome home ceremony was enacted by our 61st legislature. Is that right, Dean? With the intent that that day would be on or about the day that the last person that was brought out of Vietnam would have returned home. So it wasn't exclusively towards Vietnam veterans, but of course, whenever you have a welcome home ceremony, you focus on the Vietnam veterans and the Korean veterans because there's one certainty that we all know, that our society as a whole treated them in such a horrible manner that we can't ever unring that bell, but we can certainly do what we can for future generations and for today. And I know that myself coming home from war, I had a completely different experience and a very welcome in return. But it was a privilege to see those wonderful people and be part of that. So next year when that rolls around, I encourage everybody, if you got an opportunity, to go there. And it occurred to me that I would like to see, and maybe put on one of our work sessions, I want to see American flags lined in our center street when we have 4th of July, when we have Flag Day, when we have Memorial Day. You go to small towns and you see that all over Wyoming. And you don't see it here. And it's not because we don't have the same regard for it, it's because we've overlooked it. And so if we could discuss that as a group, whenever we have these ceremonies, I would like to see Casper look like the small town and the community that it is. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for representing us. Councilwoman Lutz.
Nothing tonight, thank you.
Councilman Bates.
One, what Keith said about the savings, or watching what we're spending, I do agree with him on that. After just catching a glimpse of the government looking at, especially Wyoming, and kind of questioning about giving so much money to Wyoming, that could hurt us in the long run, and I think we need to be kind of prepared for that. So I agree with him on that. Wednesday, I've been just kind of throwing it out there to people, but Wednesday I got to go right along with the water sewer treatment plan. I got to go through it more in depth. That was really cool to just learn a lot more about it, and so many moving parts, and those 13 workers during the day, one person in the evening and one person at graveyard running that entire facility is amazing to me. Then I got to go out on out in the field and see the stuff that they use to clean the sewer pipes, from bricks to root balls, and they explained all that to me. And the nozzle that they put on it, I don't know how much you guys know, but the nozzle that they put on and put through the pipes shoots out 300 psi of water out that just shreds that stuff. And that was kind of cool to learn how much they know about going into that. To the little camera, they got a little remote control car type thing that they send down the pipes, that they have different wheels for different pipes, and goes down and can see everything in the pipes. And that was cool to actually get to see that in operation. Something that when I was talking to the guys there, I don't think it's been brought up. They didn't purposely bring it up to me as a council member. It was just questioning about the water trucks. Found out our water trucks is part of a national emergency. If I can't remember what they called it, it was like FCCA or FDA, or I don't remember, I'm sorry. But it's for emergencies. It's the same as almost our fire trucks, police officers, vehicles. It's the same. And I think we need to look at adding, with the growth of Casper, they have 2 trucks that they run for all of Casper, I do believe, to clean the sewer systems out. And with the amount of growth, I think we need to look at maybe another truck. It is a $500,000 expense. Just kind of looking stuff up on it. But I think it's something that in a year, maybe 5 years, we need to look at investing in having 3 with the growth of Casper. So, but the experience was actually really stinky but awesome to learn. So that's it for me.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Pacheco.
I don't have anything. I was on vacation last week for spring break, so I missed the meeting at the senior center, but I've been in touch with them, so catch up with that. But other than that, I'm meeting with the YEC on Thursday, so I'll be meeting with them. They have a few ideas. They wanted to run past me some grand goals for the city. They have a few things to go over, so I'll be reporting on that next week.
Great. Councilman Friel.
2 things. Sergeant Jones got back with us on the school zones. That was brought up a few weeks ago, as far as I had a citizen who was concerned about the length of the school zones, and I see that they've now dialed those back a little bit with the school district across the city, so that's a good thing. And then, correct me if I'm wrong, I wanted as a backup to Councilman Walsh to CNFR. Those tickets go on sale this week, correct?
They started.
Yes, ticket sales started this week.
So CNFR tickets are for sale, so go out and get you some. That's it.
Vice Mayor Johnson.
Just something that's kind of been weighing on my mind recently, and then with some of the comments tonight, I don't understand or think it's necessary to have this hostile tone with our liquor license holders. We have this all of a sudden out of nowhere tone of threats and now this, you must come down here and grovel in front of the crown in order to keep your liquor license. I don't understand why that's a thing, and I don't think it's necessary. It's pretty easy to find out who the liquor license holders are if you have questions. But to, Councilman Huber, Councilman Bates said it, this is a privilege, and if you don't come down here, I just think that's a crock, and it's unneeded. And that's just something that's been weighing on my mind. That's it.
Thank you. During our pre-meeting, we did talk about CATSI a little bit, and it reminded me of the service that we have received from Marge Cole over the years, who is approaching retirement or very near retirement. And I hope we will do more to recognize her service as she reaches her final, her actual termination date. But Marge Cole created CATSI. She created the bus system. There were many who helped her, but she was always in the lead. And this entire community owes her a considerable debt, and she should be recognized for the contribution she made to this community over many, many years. We would simply not have public transportation, in my opinion, without her efforts. And so she is a true treasure in our community. And with that, a notice of an executive session to take place at this date and during this meeting was given. We have a matter to discuss regarding land acquisition. Therefore, the chair would entertain a motion to adjourn into executive session, and at the conclusion of that executive session to reconvene this regular meeting solely for the purpose of adjournment of this regular meeting.
So moved.
Please.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Pacheco, seconded by Councilman Friel. There being a majority of members present and a motion to adjourn into an executive session having been moved and seconded, and that motion requiring a 2/3 majority of the council present, please cast your vote. And please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, motion passed.
We are hereby adjourned into an executive session.